Garden Party, the virtual series from the Southern California News Group, where we aim to give you tips, tricks, and insights into getting the most joy and productivity out of your gardening experience. And also maybe help you find a community of like-minded green thumbs, or at least wannabe green thumbs, which I am. By the way, my name is Sam Dunn. I'm the senior editor of premium content here at the Southern California News Group. I want to say thank you to all our Reader Reward subscribers, and really to all of you who've made our ongoing virtual program so popular. By the way, if you are a Reader Reward subscriber attending today, you're automatically entered to win a $100 gift certificate to Home Depot and a signed copy of Herbal Houseplants by our guest today, Susan Betts. And if you're not a subscriber, well, why not? Go to scng.com/subscribe to find your local paper and join us as a subscriber. Before we get started, I need to tell you a few things. As an attendee, you're muted, but if you have questions, and we hope you do, use the Q&A feature on the Zoom toolbar on your screen. And certainly if you want to make comments or just chat up with other people, use the chat feature found there as well. We've got SCNG's feature editor, Vanessa Franco, behind the scenes like the great Oz, monitoring questions and comments, and she'll respond as much as possible. This session will be videotaped and a link will be sent to you so you can share or just revisit some of your favorite moments. It's also posted at scng.com/virtual events, where you can find all of our past virtual shows, as well as see what's coming up. Now, it's my extreme pleasure to introduce our guest, well, our resident expert, Joshua Siskin. He is the gardening columnist at the LA Daily News since 1993. He holds a master's degree in horticulture from UC Davis. He's also been a landscaping and gardening practices instructor for the Los Angeles Unified School District and UCLA Extension, and he owned his own landscape company. He's written a book too. It's called Green Plants Under Smoggy Skies, a guide for the Los Angeles gardener. And wait, there is more. He's also a licensed psychotherapist. So maybe, Joshua, that's why you're so good, as I always joke, at getting to the root of our gardening issues. Wah, wah, wah. Anyway, let me hand it over to you. You take it away. Have a great show.
Thank you, Samantha. It's great to be here again with you. Just to get us started here, I just brought a little show and tell, especially since Thanksgiving is coming up. I got a couple of plants that you can use for seasoning your stuffing. One of them is winter savory. Like most herbs, it's from the Middle East, so it's very adaptable to our climate. It's very easy to grow. And there are a couple of mints here that don't be fooled. This is ginger mint, but it does not produce ginger. It has the scent of ginger. Okay, and on the other side, we have pineapple mint, which has the scent of pineapple. Very nice. And behind, speaking of pineapple, we have also pineapple sage. Okay, it's a beautiful flowering plant. Doesn't need very much water, and so it's used for both seasoning and for flower arrangement. And then I have two plants here that are both artemisias. Now you may have probably seen these. Sometimes people call them dusty millers. They're very attractive plants. Many of them have lacy foliage. And the drink vermouth was originally made from this plant. Now it's artificial ingredients, but the reason they call it vermouth is because ver means worm in German. And this plant has medicinal qualities that are useful for stomach ailments, which people at one time thought were caused by worms in your stomach, so they call it wormwood. And here's another wormwood. You see the variation, but you could fill an entire yard with artemisia plants. Another one of their qualities is it's an insect repellent. If you crush these leaves and shred these leaves and put them in your closet, you will deter moths. So that's one of the functions of herbs, is as an insect repellent, among many other functions, which we'll be talking about.
I love that. Can we find out who this amazing woman is on the screen below here?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce Susan Betts, who has written 3 books. The most recent is Herbal Houseplants, that she also wrote a book called Neighboring with Nature, Native Herbs for Purpose and Pleasure, and Magical Moons and Seasonal Circles, which is about, she calls it stepping into the circle of seasons, stop, look, and listen. So we're very pleased to have you here today, Susan. And I should also mention that you've been growing herbs for 35 years. You are the education and outreach coordinator for the Slayton Arboretum at Hillsdale College. Susan lives in Michigan. That's
I was.
and also she was, that is, and following that, she managed she owned and managed the little farm herb shop. And so she has a lot. Not only has she grown herbs, she sold herbs. She worked in an arboretum in the herbal section, and she's also a member of the Herbal Society of America, and is very interested in native herbs. Which, if you go to the website of the Herb Society of America, you'll find the California natives that are herbal, and we'll get into that later in the program. Well, Susan, it's great to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so maybe without further ado, we'll start looking at some of the slides and giving you some more basic information here. So, we talk about one of the herb uses as tea. That's maybe the first thing that comes to your mind, and we shouldn't forget that the tea that everybody drinks, the common tea, I guess you could call it, comes from the leaves of a camellia plant. Okay, but it's a Chinese camellia. The camellia that everybody grows with the beautiful flowers is the Japanese camellia, but the camellia that produces tea is a Chinese camellia, right? And it's a tropical plant. Although I once saw one growing at the in the Descanso Gardens in La Cañada, Flint Ridge, outside the tea house. They had an actual tea plant growing. But Susan, tell us something about the herbs that you're most fond of when it comes to making tea.
Well, I'm a green tea drinker, but I'm very fond of herbal teas. Chamomile is, as you can see it up on the screen, I grow that, and it's a relaxing tea. And I also add hops to it to make it even more relaxing.
What is that, hops?
Yes, hops.
HOPS.
So
yeah.
Like to make beer, but they also work very well in tea. In lemon balm, I mean, it's a really awesome herb, and it can be somewhat prolific in your garden, but it's a very relaxing plant. I like to just go out and grab a handful of it fresh and make a cup of tea, right, using the fresh herb. It's just a real invigorating, but also is very relaxing. And then mint, you just described some wonderful mints, and there's a whole variety. And I guess looking at this, I would say all the different herbs that you can use for tea, there's a lot more, but I guess personal preference would play a role in this.
Right.
But if you're trying to have non-caffeinated teas, herbal infusions are the way to go.
So yeah, well, okay, great. So here's some other herbal uses, and you can see in the upper right, insect repellent wormwood. We talked about that. And then obviously culinary and ornamental, aromatic, and medicinal. I learned recently that aloe vera is the most popular indoor plant, according to some surveys, but it can also be used in the garden, and it's widely used for a variety of medicinal purposes.
It's a great plant, and it is used for a lot of medicinal reasons. Some people take it internally. I don't do that, but it's a great plant just to have on your windowsill in your house. So if somebody gets a burn or a mosquito bite, it's like an instant way to take care of that little problem. It's just a wonderful, and it tolerates a lot of neglect also. so.
Mhm.
And then the aromatic herbs, I mean, fragrance is personal for people, but there are some just lovely plants that you can grow indoors and outdoors that will lift your spirits by just brushing the leaves. And some, you know, when the wind blows across them, they release their fragrance. And some,
Some in
like the
particular,
thyme.
are there a couple, are there herbs that are at the top of your list in terms of fragrance?
Oh, I love lavender. I love lemon verbena. The mints,
Right.
rosemary. The scented geraniums are awesome
Mhm.
because they come in so many different scents. But
Yeah.
it all depends. And you could ask me that question tomorrow, and I might tell you 5 or 6 different ones. I love the scent of marjoram, which is a little it's in the oregano family, but it has a lovely fragrance. It's great to cook with.
Mhm.
But it stands for joy in the language of flowers. And when you touch it, it just has a delicate but very uplifting fragrance.
Nice.
Hey, folks,
So
I'm
that's
sorry
one.
to bump in, but we have a question from Tracy Lideker, and she wants to know, what are hops? Are hops considered, I guess, an herb?
Yeah, well,
They
anything,
are,
go ahead.
no, you go ahead, Joshua.
No, I was gonna say, you know, anything that you can, an herb is herbs come from leaves, okay, to distinguish them from spices. So any leaf that can be utilized for culinary, medicinal, or fragrance is considered. But hops is also the flower, actually, if I'm not mistaken. No.
Yeah, yes, it is. And so it's a vine, and a lot of people like to use those vines. They can become, they're really, how do I describe this? Not aggressive, but it makes a great covering for a fence
Right.
or an arbor.
Yeah.
And then you can harvest the flower heads. I use them for tea, and with home brewers today, everybody's brewing all sorts of beers and things. Hops is a important ingredient in that. But
You
it's
can,
also a very,
right. I've also seen those growing up an arbor at the Descanso Gardens in La Cañada, Flint Ridge. So you can definitely grow it in our area. Yeah.
right. It's a great vine, but it needs room, and it's a perennial vine.
Right. So I brought this in because, you know, if you're really interested in herbs, you owe it to yourself to visit the Huntington Herb Garden in San Marino. It's part of the Huntington Library and Botanical Gardens, and it's definitely worth a try. I mean, the botanical gardens are phenomenal, and they've made a lot of innovations there over the years. There's a lot of new exhibits, and but the herb garden is really special, and that's an education in itself.
Yes, I've been there, and it was wonderful, just absolutely wonderful.
So, you know, a lot of us don't have yards, don't have gardens, but we still want to grow herbs. And then the question is that there really is no limit to, there's no place that you can't grow herbs, whether it's on your balcony or your patio or indoors. And I like to talk a little bit about containers, because I know there's a big difference between clay and plastic, or what we call ceramic or glazed. Right. Well, here we have the potting mix that's recommended by Susan, but this is all your variety of containers. And I think it's worth spending a moment, Susan, to say, why is it that you prefer growing in clay pots as opposed to other types of containers?
Because I think with herbs, they don't like wet feet. They really can't hold a grudge. And it's just healthier for the roots. For me, the clay is more attractive. It's more environmentally friendly. And when you have a plant in a beautiful pot, you tend to be a little bit more careful with it because it adds to the decorative qualities of the plant, even if you're using it indoors or out.
So that's a clay pot, even though it's gray in color? Is that clay or is that ceramic?
No, it's clay.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know they could have different colors. Yeah, they're very interesting. Yeah.
There's a wide variety of clay pots.
I see.
And there's some people who actually collect the pots as well as the plants, and pairing them together,
Right.
knowing how your plant grows, and putting it into the, proper pot. But it's just the roots get more oxygen, the plant will dry out faster, but it's just, as I said, healthier for herbs. And I've just found that over the years and years I've been growing them. Some people like the plastic pots, but you have to be a little bit more careful about fungus gnats and things like that, because the
Right.
soil might tend to be a little more moist.
You know, I just saw someone ask the question about wood. What's your feeling about wood? Is it contained?
I think there's some very nice wood containers. I always use untreated wood for like raised beds, things like that.
Right.
And growing in containers and pots right now is just there's so many things available for people that it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And growing in wood, like I like to go to flea markets and pick up wooden containers that might have been used for like cheese or different things like that, and plant herbs in them. It makes the container, you can find some really unusual wooden things, people planting wooden wheelbarrows, or the wine or beer barrels.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just explore and see what you can come up with.
Sure.
I just want to beam in here again, folks, because we have questions piling up from our very enthusiastic audience. Linda Seck wants to know, is aloe vera and other herbs we're talking about, are they toxic to household pets?
That's a good, yeah, go ahead.
What do we know about that?
Well, aloe vera is non-toxic. And I think, I can't generalize, but I would say, to the best of my knowledge, you don't have to be worried about toxicity with herbs. Catnip is an herb that cats actually are drawn to when they're in heat. It makes them relax. There's something in there that calms them down. What's your experience with that, Susan?
I don't have cats, but I have a lot of friends that do, and I've not heard of a problem with that, because if edible and useful for me, then it will, it doesn't bother animals. But you want to be careful with that. And like, I don't know about eucalyptus or something like that. So
Right.
It depends on where the plant is located at. And that's where people need to do a little bit of personal research when they bring a plant into the house. Ask the shopkeeper where you purchased it at, about your if it's good for or dangerous for pets. But my plants, I've never had a problem with that. And some people recommend using dried rue, drying it and placing it around your pots that you don't want cats to go near.
Yeah, rue is RUE. It has a very strong fragrance. In fact, in the Middle Ages, I used to put it on the floor in cathedrals to chase away the evil spirits. That's how strong the fragrance is from rue. It's actually a very attractive plant.
Lovely. I love this. This segues into a couple other questions we have. Nina Nazarian wants to know, can you advise on natural pest control for herbs, especially basil and mint? And then speaking of basil, Grace Shilton says, I have no luck growing basil, even though I am known for growing just about everything else.
This is great. This is a transition to the next slide, because I think the next slide is no, I'm sorry. One more, I think, one more. Yeah, plant health. Go back to plant health. And this is Susan's recommended concoction for controlling the type of insects, anyway, that you may find in your when growing herbs indoors, especially. They're more of a problem. Outdoors, you seldom have pests. But there you have the recipe. And the hydrogen peroxide, you know, that probably surprises some people, but what hydrogen peroxide, it bubbles, and the bubbling action of it releases oxygen, and that oxygenates the soil and makes it and makes it much healthier for the roots. And when the roots are healthy, often the plants follow suit. But yeah, we skipped a bunch of slides. I just thought,
So
yeah. Anyway, you know it's
one
on here.
other,
You can come back later and find it. Yeah. So yeah, let's go into the growing plants, growing herbs from seed. Tell us about that, Susan, because I know herbs are very easy to propagate vegetatively. You know, you can take little pieces, stick them in water, or you can take mint, right, which roots wherever it grows, and you divide the mint into,
Right.
into little pieces and plant them. But tell me about growing from seed, let's say, out of the packet.
I grow a lot of herbs out of the packet, and all the ones that I see here, I have grown from seed. And I like to grow them from seed because it gives me time to do other garden chores in the spring. And I'm in Michigan, so my garden calendar is a little bit different than you folks in California, but I like to grow things from seed. The one thing you want to be careful about when you're growing some things from seed, especially like mint, it doesn't always come true to form. So that, Joshua, is better to take cuttings of if you
Okay.
truly want that mint, the variety that maybe a friend has, or you see it in a nursery or something like that. So that's what you want to be careful with when you pick your seeds. But there's a lot of very reliable seed companies, and you show some of those at the end of this presentation. But
Right.
it's fun to watch something grow from seed.
Yeah.
And for me, the plants I grow from seed are more adapted to the outdoor or indoor environment here in, Michigan. But that would be the same all over,
Yeah.
all over the country.
So there's a lot of technical information here, and I don't really want to, because you guys that are watching, you can come back and look at this, in your own good time. But I just want to make sure that we get through to the different varieties of herbs, because that's really where the fun is, and that's where the joy comes in. Yeah.
Just so you know, I just want to step in as we go through the herbs, and we have a lot of questions on basil. It's really
Okay,
giving
good.
people problems.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So maybe I just want to take. I want to pay attention to a couple of herbs you might not know, basils you might not know about. In the bottom left, second from left, is African blue basil. That's a perennial basil, very tough, very drought tolerant. It grows 3 to 4 feet tall. It has flowers almost all year round. It's a little more pungent maybe than the sweet basil, but it's an incredible as an ornamental plant. And then I know that Susan wants to draw our attention to Rehani basil on the upper right, and then piccolo basil, which is to the left of it, which is a dwarf basil. Yeah.
The purple basil, I just like to say, I love to use that. It's really pretty with marigolds in the garden, or calendula. They play off each other very well, but I use that in herb vinegars, and that's one of my favorite basils to dry for potpourri, because the leaves dry and they're so fragrant, and mixed with dried calendula or other herbs from your garden, it just makes a lovely, lovely potpourri and vinegar. I mean, it lends that purple color to vinegar too. So that's an all around great basil. The Rehani, I like that. My friend Teresa, who had Shady Acres Herb Farm in Minnesota, growing in the greenhouse, she was getting downy mildew. And so she ordered this plant and started growing it from seed. And it seems to be more resistant to downy mildew, but it has a real nice flavor. And it's a little bit speckled. It's a great pollinator plant, but it seems to be a little bit more disease resistant. And I think that one they found in Africa. And then with the growing herbs indoors, that's a little bit different. And so one of the great things that's been happening over the past 20 years is nurseries and plant breeders are doing a lot with the size, and that's a dwarf one, and it does really well in a pot inside. But with growing basil inside, I don't have any that, Joshua, that are perennial here in Michigan. That
Right.
African blue basil, it's a great plant, and it gives instant gratification in the back of an herb garden or some place. It's almost like an instant shrub. So that's a great plant. But I kind of lost my train of thought here when I'm looking at all these.
Yeah.
The size of the plant is really important, especially inside. But I raise basil several sowings throughout a summer. And so when I bring a basil inside in the winter to winter over, I will have started that here in Michigan out in my garden at the end of July or into August, but which might be different from your listeners.
Hey, folks, we still have a whole bunch of basil questions there. There's a question of how to keep it healthy in a clay pot. What's your take on planting herbs that come in organic soil? And also, pinching off isn't seeming to help some people with their basil. What can you recommend?
I mean, so they're asking, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
You say that the pinching doesn't help them grow. What was it? What was the first?
Yes. The first one is, why do I have such a difficult time keeping my sweet basil healthy in a clay pot?
Oh, in a clay pot. Well, it could be that it's losing water very quickly. I know that's the downside, because the water tends to evaporate. See, what happens in a clay pot, it's porous, so the water exits through the sides of the pot. So you may have to be a little more attentive to the watering needs when a basil is in a container. Well, anything is in a container, but especially clay. I mean, the kind of hot weather we've had the last few days, you might have to water every day. I mean, depending on the size of the container. The bigger the container, the better, the longer you can wait between watering. So that's something to keep in mind. But clay itself, it should not be a problem. You just have to be more attentive to the watering needs.
Right, or you have to be careful not to overwater, and you want to make sure that the plant has good air circulation around it. And I guess maybe the time of day that you water your plant, you wouldn't want to water it at night, so there's a lot of water on the leaves, or watering it in the hot sun where the droplets are laying on the leaves.
Right.
So that's very important. And as you and I were talking before, Joshua, a plant growing in a container is dependent upon the gardener for its every need. So, it's very important to just kind of observe, read the plant, and start looking at it closely, and it'll tell you what it needs. And keeping it pinched back is a great idea too. Unless you're trying to attract pollinators, and basil plants are great for pollinators.
Yeah, in other words, let it flower. If you keep pinching it, it won't flower, and you won't get pollinators. But you got to be also careful. Don't pinch back too much, and then water a lot, and then you'll have those problems, with the root rot and so on.
And maybe you want to pick a different variety of basil to grow. I mean, there are a lot of different varieties that you can pick and try experimenting. And that's one of the lovely things about growing and using herbs. Experimentation is great, and you can learn a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for an hour about all the different lemon-scented herbs. Probably the upper right, the lemon verbena, is the most famous, the most aromatic, and it's a beauty to grow in Southern California. It's a perennial. I've had mine for probably 20 years, and I can't say enough about it. Lemongrass, bottom right, is another one you can grow here in Southern California. It's not the most attractive plant, but the leaves are wonderful for cooking, and highly recommend it.
I can't imagine having a lemon verbena plant for 20 years. I like them and I grow them in my garden. The leaves, and I bring them out in the middle of the winter, the dried leaves, and smell them because they're so fragrant.
Right.
But actually, I think it's kind of a whiny, leggy plant here
Yeah,
in
interesting.
Michigan.
Interesting. You know,
So,
maybe we should spend a moment talking. What's the difference between fresh herbs and dried herbs in terms of usage? Like, if you want to make a pot of lemon verbena tea, how many fresh leaves would you need as opposed to dry?
well, you use more fresh than you do dried because when they're dried, they're a lot stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
I'd say 1 tablespoon, and this is, I mean, that's, there's no strict rules.
Yeah, it's approximate. It's approximate. Yeah.
Approximate. So 1 tablespoon of fresh to maybe 2 teaspoons, 2 or 3 teaspoons of dried.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just take handfuls, and when I'm
Just
making
put it in the
tea,
pot. Yeah.
just put it in the pot.
Mhm.
So when I'm looking at your lemon leaf there, the Plectranthus, said that. This
Yeah.
is this is an awesome plant.
Second from the
And
right on the bottom. Yeah.
I just discovered this a couple years ago, and I like the Plectranthus species. There's a lot of different ones, and there's Cuban oregano, which is one, and some people use it for cooking, but this one, I want to back up a little bit, but most of these plants are decorative. People buy them for their decorative look and their fuzzy succulent leaves. But this one is edible, and it's from Africa. And the lemon fragrance in this plant is unbelievable. When you touch it, it's like having a pet. But I've made a simple syrup out of this, and a simple herbal syrup, and the lemon taste is just wonderful. So this is a good example of a very decorative plant, but also really useful, and the lemon fragrance is great.
Wow.
Susan, that segues actually into a question that we have. This is actually about basil from Carol Zimring, but it, I guess, could apply to other herbs that we're talking about. She says, oh, excuse me, I said the wrong person, but the question is, are all forms of basil edible, or are some herbs just purely ornamental? And then Carol wants to know, she's missing something. Sometimes her basil in particular goes fine, and then other times it dies in about a week. What is she missing?
Yeah. Well, I would, from my experience with basil, I'd say half day sun, at the most, and maybe a little bit less. Okay. Morning sun is fine. Afternoon sun, probably a little bit less, right? But you don't want to go more than half day sun because it's sensitive to Southern California heat. So I think that might be, that might help her answer the question. And to the best of my knowledge, all basils are good for cooking. Some are more pungent than others, like the African basil. You want to experiment with it. Don't make a whole pot roast until you maybe use it for tea. Maybe see the difference between that and the basil that you're accustomed to, because there are differences in flavor. And so, as Susan had said, it's a lot about personal taste. But yeah, they're all good for culinary purposes, to the best of my knowledge.
Some are more, like the Genovese basils, those are really tasty for pesto and things like that. But usually when you go into your nursery, or if you get a good herb book, that will help you determine a little bit better how to use that herb or that basil.
This is good, Senator. There are more than 100 varieties of scented geraniums. And they all come from the tip of South Africa. And some, of course, there have been a lot of hybrids, but you can find any flavor, any scent you can imagine, I think you can find in scented geranium. So it's really, it's like a limitless category of herbs. And a lot of it, some of them are very attractive flowers. Like you can see a tower of rose there in the middle. It's some, I really like the peppermint geranium in the middle on the bottom. Very, very strong fragrance of peppermint.
It does, and that's a favorite plant for children. If you wanted to give a child a plant, a special plant, and to celebrate spring, or just to have them have a plant that's interesting, the fuzzy leaves and the minty fragrance, they really love it. And a lot of times that's one of the #1 plants that you'll find in a garden, a child's garden of herbs. And then the rose scented ones are wonderful for, I use those for cooking. You can add a couple rose scented leaves to a China black tea, and it gives it a nice little floral taste. Then all of them I love to dry for potpourri. Some of them make really lovely topiaries. The lemon scented ones are just, I mean, it's enough to wake you up. Very nice. And a lot of people during the Victorian times, scented geraniums were all the rage. And there probably wouldn't be one house that wouldn't have one someplace, because they do very well indoors, and they don't need as much sun, and they're kind of patient and tolerant with people, but they do make lovely house plants in and out in and out of the garden. Some I will plant right in my garden, and they'll get huge. And then some I keep in pots. I have a thyme garden, and in my thyme garden, I have dispersed pots of scented geraniums, because they like the sun and the same kind of growing conditions as, as thyme, but the leaf shape, they're bigger. And so it makes a nice decorative combination together. Plus they get along with each other. And that's with your garden, you want your plants to talk to each other, not bicker. Plus you want to make them so that they're easy to take care of by putting plants together with like needs. And thyme and scented geranium work really well together.
Let me just jump.
Yeah, I just want to say one more. These are extremely drought tolerant scented geraniums. So really no muss, no fuss plants. Go ahead, Simone.
Related to that, related to the scented geraniums, this segues into a question we're having about pests in the garden. Does that scent help drive away pests, or have any kind of benefit that way as well? Because Linda Wood asks, she says her outdoor herb garden is being decimated by rats, and we had another question related to gophers. So what do you have to say about that?
I think that's a separate issue. I don't think rats are deterred by plants. I never heard of it, unfortunately. But in terms of fragrance, I think it would have it's not among the classic plants for pest deterrents, to tell you the truth. It does have fragrance, but normally mints are known for their pest deterrent. There are actually 3 families of plants known for it's not so much they deter, but they invite beneficial insects that consume the insect pest. We're talking about plants in the daisy family that would include chamomile. We're talking about plants in the mint family, right? And then the last one are the umbellifers, things like fennel and dill and the plants with the lacy leaves. So those definitely do have a beneficial effect where pests are concerned. I haven't heard specifically that scented geraniums do, though.
Well, they do sell that one because of the citronella.
The
leaves, and they tell people that that's going to deter mosquitoes.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a really valid thing, but yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, it's kind of a come on. Yeah, the lemon scented geranium. There is something called citronella that I think they extract and they put it in candles and other things.
Right.
But I'm not convinced that it really does work. and talk a little about rosemary. Let me just say a quick point of information here. There's a town called Acerola in southern Italy, south of Naples, where a population of 3,000 people, I think 200 of them are over the age of 100, and they say one of the reasons is that every meal is either spiced or cooked with rosemary, and there's a strong feeling that not only does it contribute to your physical health, but also to your mental health. They've done studies where people were taking exams, and they did better when they were sitting when there was a rosemary scent. It helped their memory. So that's something to think about. But go ahead, Susan. I know you have something to say about rosemary.
I grow a lot of different varieties of rosemary, and it is supposed to be helpful with your memory, Alzheimer's. The one thing that's really cool about herbs and so many, like rosemary, the mints, we have the ways that we have used them, and there's always new generations coming up, looking at plants and finding new ways to use them that we haven't thought of before. And I think they're using it a lot, as I said, for memory, for Alzheimer's and things like that. But it's also a great herb to cook with. It's decorative, and it's a great pollinator plant. And there are all different varieties, and we each come up with our most favorite variety. And as I said, I have a lot of different ones that I enjoy growing. And you can use the leaves as skewers for barbecuing. It's good in vinegar. It blends well. It's what I would call a dominant herb as far as cooking. So you want to use like the softer herbs like marjoram and things like that to blend with it, depending on which variety you pick. Some are more have more flavor that are better for cooking, but then your personal palate comes into play there. And as I was showing Joshua earlier, this is a rosemary plant that I have that's called Blue Boy, and I grow this one inside because it's one of the smaller varieties of rosemary, and so it does really well inside, and it adapts really well to a pot. But if I were to take you out into my greenhouse, I have a rosemary that we have to use a dolly to move it in and out each spring, and huge. And I've had it for probably 15, 20 years, but I like it. And so it's worth it to move it in and out. I don't know, my husband's starting to look at it in fear each spring when we bring it out or bring it back in. So
Quick question. So since we're talking about cooking, Denise has a question. Do you cook with, and I think this is for all herbs, not just rosemary, but she wants to know, do you cook with the flowers as well, or just the leaves?
Some you can, like you make your tea from chamomile flowers, but all the herb flowers are edible. And that's one of the lovely things about, another one of the lovely things about using herbs is to use the edible flowers. Like rosemary, the pretty blue flowers are nice to sprinkle over maybe a custard or a salad. And so, yes, the one thing about herbs you want to keep in mind is they're multifunctional in and out of the garden. And most parts of them are edible. But there's something really special about their flowers. And I use their flowers a lot. You know, just if you're having some friends over, just to spiff up a plate really easily, and it doesn't cost you anything. You just sort of, put it on the plate and everybody goes, oh, that's so beautiful. And it's not only beautiful, it's simple.
Love it. And before we get off this topic, Susan, Casey McDuff wanted you to please repeat the name of the lemon fragrance herb you've made simple syrup from.
That is, Joshua, do you want to?
Yeah. Plectranthus Mount Carbina.
Carmine. And
Plectranthus Mount Carbine.
And so for your listeners, this is a herb catalog, and this is for people that, well, they have a lot of great herbs. And Conrad and his wife, Aku, they live in Toronto, but they ship all over the United States, and people from California, Texas buy. And if you want to, this catalog is where I found that plant.
And what's the name of it? What's the name of the, oh, Richter's.
Richter's. Yeah.
Richters, Richter's, yeah.
And so if you want to learn more about herbs, catalogs are really wonderful. And he describes them. He and his wife are plant hunters. She's from Africa, and they go back and collect plants, and they come up with some pretty cool stuff. So this catalog alone would be worth it to, if you're interested in herbs and unusual herbs and how they're used and how to grow them. And they also have interesting, like Joshua's references at the end of this program today. Yeah, how to, it's what I would recommend is go to some of these websites, and they will give you more information on how to grow specific herbs, what to do and what not to do if you find yourself having a question. But that's where this came from. And he has lots of really cool stuff in here.
Great. I think we now go to lavender. Can we hit lavender? Oh, well, here's Mediterranean. Yeah, skip that, right. Skip the Mediterranean. They're all Mediterranean. Most herbs are Mediterranean. So here's this, this is like you have to put this on your bucket list if you're an herb lover, right? And that's one time in your life you have to go to Provence, France in June, and you will see lavender as far as the eye can see. I love those pictures. And there's such an enormous variety of lavender with different fragrances. The flowers they can be blue, they can be mauve, they can be purple, and they can even there's a yellow lavender, believe it or not. There's a lavender with yellow flowers that some people say goes really well with the purple. Susan, you're growing lavender indoors. I'm sure people would like to see your beautiful lavender.
This is Goodwin Creek Gray, and they use it a lot for topiaries and indoor. It's a really great indoor lavender that grows really well inside. And when you're picking your plants to grow, like I have a lot of different lavenders that I grow out in my garden. Like such as one that's called Phenomenal. It's a huge plant. And then I like the Munstead and the Heat Coat, but this is a great one, and it does really well inside. And so if you're thinking you want to grow one inside, I would recommend this above all. It's really,
tell us a little something about what are the light that an herb needs growing indoors. How much light does that lavender get?
It gets a lot of light. And what I like to do is, like, where the plant originates from will give you a good clue of how much light it needs. And Joshua's been mentioning Mediterranean, and that tells you a lot. They're going to need 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day inside. Or
right next to the window, right?
I have it like in my office. There's windows all over the place, and then I have actually a sunroom where I will grow it. And like I'll have it in my office, but then in the middle of winter, we can go days or like 10 to 15 days in Michigan without sunlight. I don't like it. Either do my plants. So I will move these guys to the sunroom.
Got it.
So I'll move my house plants around so that they have better light.
Mm-hmm. So there are two main kinds of bay you can grow. There's the sweet bay and the California bay. Both are very sturdy plants. And the dried bay leaves, you pay a pretty penny for 3 or 4 dried bay leaves in a little container, And if you grow the plant, you'll have a lifetime supply. And it's just it's very versatile, and in Southern California, I've seen it grown as a 20-foot tree or as a 25-foot hedge. If you want, you can keep it as a lower hedge or a middle-sized hedge. It's a very adaptable plant for almost any garden situation or landscaping situation. And then the California Bay is a little more pungent. It doesn't have the same. Some people don't use it to the same extent they do the sweet bay for seasoning because it's a more pungent herb, but it has a similar usage to the sweet bay. You can grow it as a tall hedge. You can grow it smaller, and both of these can be grown indoors with the right amount of light.
Yes, they can.
Question, Linda
People like-
Tim wants,
I was just going to say real quickly, people like to put bay leaf in their flour to keep the moths and stuff out.
Mm.
perfect segue, because this question from Linda Tim is, which herbs attract bugs like ladybugs and hummingbirds?
Oh, well, that's a good one. If you're talking, mint is the one. Mint attracts beneficial bugs, and then also the plants in the, like I said, the umbellifers, which would mean the fennels and parsley and cilantro. Okay, those are all those will all attract beneficial insects, and yeah.
The humming, we call the pineapple sage that's right behind Joshua.
Yeah.
Hummingbirds love that plant.
Yeah.
And a lot of the salvias they like too.
Right.
I have found because we have a lot of hummingbirds here.
Salvia is a botanical name for sage, right? Which is sage is what we use in our stuffing on Thanksgiving. But any plant that's a sage is going to attract hummingbirds, and they have this kind of tubular flower that hummingbirds like. Yeah. Patchouli. This was a revelation to me because Susan grows it as an indoor plant very successfully, and I had no idea that could be. It's tropical, so it really is strictly an indoor plant. You can't grow that outdoors, but if you can grow it indoors in Michigan, I'm sure you can grow it indoors in Southern California. Tell us about your patchouli.
It's a wonderful plant. It has such a wonderful fragrance. And this is one plant that you can grow as a house plant, and it doesn't need as much bright sun. As a matter of fact, patchouli resents really bright sunlight. And so you can set it so that it doesn't need as many hours of sunlight, say, as this lavender. So the growth needs or light needs of these plants are different. But I like to grow this plant. The fragrance alone is wonderful. You can drop some of these leaves in a bath or a shower, and it's very relaxing. I dry the leaves for potpourri. I might put a dried leaf in a letter to a friend. And so I think it's a great plant. And I think this is one. I just like collecting odd plants, and I was really surprised at how well this does indoors. And this is, I cut this back so it can get a lot larger. It will grow a lot larger. Mm-hmm. But I cut it back, and then I save the leaves, dry them, and add them to my potpourris and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Patchouli, somebody wanted to know how to spell it. It's P-A-T-C-A. Oh, there it is, patchouli.
So some people, this is reminiscent of back in the 70s, everybody smelled like patchouli.
Yeah.
Some of our listeners.
Yeah, they use it. Yeah, it's a
great plant.
Oh, so here we are talking about mint again. I know you waxed eloquently before on the dwarf pennyroyal. This is bottom right. It's a very, very strong peppermint. I mean, it really does send you into another dimension. Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about
it's really great too. The pennyroyal is a really great mint, And what I do with that mint is I plant it around my deck. It's more like a, I cut it back so it's like a ground cover. Has a delightful scent.
Yeah.
But my dogs walk through it and it helps deter fleas.
Oh, actually, and
And
I
so like
remember the Corsican, I think, is even more pungent. Yeah. The one in the
it's
middle
more
on the bottom.
pungent. But the dwarf pennyroyal is a lot easier to grow. The
Okay.
Corsican mint, you really have to pay attention to it. It's, it doesn't, you have to be very careful how you water it and how frequently you water it. So some people don't want to be bothered with trying Corsican mint, but for me, it's worth it. And mint is in my garden, it attracts a lot of beneficial wasps, the little flowers.
Oh, yeah,
of mint.
yeah.
So those it's a which I had never thought about until I started really studying about pollinators. And there's a flower for every single insect. I would, I think, but so I was surprised. I started looking at closely what was on my mints.
Yeah, the beneficial wasps lay their eggs in insect pests, and as the larvae hatch out, they cannibalize the insect pest before they emerge as adult wasps.
I love this. One question really quick, Susan, circling back to your use of mint. Alona Barati wants to know, she has a lot of mint from a friend of hers who she's received. She says she must be doing something wrong because the tea she makes from it is dark and bitter. So she's stuck buying mint tea from bags at the grocery store when she wants to grow, and she wants to drink fresh tea. So any suggestions there?
What I would do with that is when you go to a nursery and go in a good herb nursery and touch the plants and see what they smell like. I have a chocolate mint that I grow, which makes a lovely tea. I grow the pineapple mint, which I really enjoy. But the best way to pick out a mint plant or even a scented geranium is you want to touch the plant and see what the fragrance is, and then pick that plant and propagate it yourself. The other thing about mint species is they cross really easily. So you want to keep them separate from each other. And that can be hard to do because they can really spread. The other mint that's one of my real favorites is orange mint or bergamot mint. And that's just over the top, the fragrance of it. You can dry it for potpourri, or you can use it as a tea. And so it just depends on your taste buds, but those are my favorite.
Well, thank you both.
Yeah.
We didn't get to everything. Joshua, you want to go through the resources that you've included here?
Yeah. So the first one, the Johnny Seeds, has 198 varieties of herb seeds. That's on the upper left-hand corner. Then the bottom left is something closer to home. It's in Squaw Valley, and you can see all the many varieties of the herbs that we've been talking about today. And then on the right, they specialize in rosemary varieties, among other things. That is the Plants Express. And then underneath, there's a nursery that specializes in basil varieties. All of the ones, Johnny's is where you can get seeds of anything you like. The other ones are whole plants. So, and then keep in mind Richter's, Richters, which is it's a source for seeds. Is that correct, Susan? It's a seed source.
And you can get, right. And like if I'm looking for like a special mint, or they just have an incredible amount of plants, unusual things to pick from. Right. I like Richter's, but they do sell a lot of seeds. I buy seeds from them. I also buy from Johnny's every year. Right. I like Fedco seeds. That's another great seed company. Another company that I really like the people that own the company, is Botanical Interests. They have a lot of great old-fashioned heirloom plants and herbs. They have a lot of really great information in their catalogs. And that's one thing that's changed back in maybe 50 to 75 years ago. You could take a garden catalog and there'd be a lot of really great information in recipes and things like that. There's some really great catalogs that now they're putting those recipes back in. They're putting how to use the plants back into, right in the catalog. So when you go through it, there's a lot of really good information. And that's one of the reasons I really like botanical interests. You can get a lot of information just reading it.
That's wonderful. I want to say, I'm so sorry this is all the time we have today. Susan, you have been absolutely amazing. Joshua, as always, thank you. And by the way, everyone, Joshua's column runs in Saturday's paper and online in our publications. His website is thesmartergardener.com. And if you want more gardening insights and tips from our experts, sign up for the Garden Party newsletter. Meanwhile, I'd like to invite you to our other programs coming up, including Bookish with Sandra Singh Low and the Get Frumpy Happy Hour with everybody's favorite humor columnist, Marla Jo Fisher. To register, go to scng.com/virtual events. And you can also find our back episodes of Garden Party there. And hey, again, if you're not a subscriber but want to be in on all of the entertainment and information we offer, give us a call at 877-469-6133. If you have any thoughts on today, or you just want to share some questions, please email us at events@scng.com. Thanks again, everyone. Sorry we didn't get to those wonderful questions. We'll see you next time.